This week on Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke, we welcome guest Barry North, a sailing and photography enthusiast who earned his PhD in chemistry from Brandeis and a master's in public health in environmental science from Columbia. His corporate health and safety career took him to Denver for 19 years. Now, based in Seattle, he spent recent years serving as a personal and professional coach and lives with his loving and supportive husband, Dean. On November 13th, 2020, Barry suffered a stroke. In today's episode, Barry uncovers powerful strategies he uses to overcome depression, reclaim his passion, and forge a path from darkness to hope. Barry offers his journey of resilience, renewal, and courage. His story is entitled Opportunities Beyond Depression. Thank you for joining us for Part 1, Barry North's Story.
Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke is made possible by our guests and tax-deductible donations from friends and listeners like you. Join us in empowering stroke survivors with stories of wisdom, purpose, connection, and hope at www.beyondstillness.org.
Hello and welcome to Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke. Stroke offers a powerful, life-changing shift in perspective. Each colorful memory creates a parable for life's greater teachings, a compass for journeys ahead, and inspired wisdom for unique growth. This podcast, Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke, offers a moment of pause for storytelling and reflection. Ultimately, Beyond Stillness is a welcoming environment that reveres the moment beyond stroke's paralysis. Still moments unite humanity and divinity. I'm your host, Molly Bucola. As we begin today, we take a moment of pause, creating space to reflect upon wisdom, purpose, connection, and hope. And we give thanks. Now, Barry North's story.
The COVID pandemic reached the U.S. in early 2020. I was 75, active, healthy, and glad to be alive. I routinely swam and rode my bike. 6 years earlier, I participated in a 200-mile bike ride from Seattle to Portland. In my free time, I'd hike the mountains around Seattle. November 13th, 2020 changed my life. It was like any other morning, except when I got up, felt off balance, and nearly fell to the right. I shrugged it off, showered, dressed, ate breakfast, and went about my day. And then the next morning, as my feet hit the floor, I collapsed. Finn, my now husband, helped me up. I called Kaiser's urgent care, and they urged, call 911. When the ambulance arrived, the EMT examined me and suggested that I save some money and have someone drive me to Kaiser Urgent Care. My landlord, Paul, swiftly delivered me to Kaiser, and within minutes, I was in an examination room. At that point, I knew I had experienced a stroke. The attendant was pretty sure too. After a scan, they transferred me by ambulance to Swedish Hospital. With all the flurry of hospital activity, I had time to think about the stroke's emotional impact. It wasn't until I was settled in my hospital bed that I was overwhelmed by grief, fear, anger, and denial. The nurses were very accommodating. I needed help going to the toilet, they gently assisted me. And even the nurse assistant made me feel safe when he walked beside me in the hall the first time I took steps with a walker. Due to COVID, the hospital restricted visitors, but they allowed Din to visit. At that point, I really needed comfort in that scary time. I spent 3 days in the hospital and then returned home to recuperate. The day I was discharged, Paul picked me up. He helped me to transfer from a wheelchair to the car. At that moment, I realized I would not be able to drive, at least for a while. That was my first realization that I had to depend on others. I felt overwhelmed with sadness that turned to shock. My life had changed so suddenly. Just days before, I enjoyed sailing, cycling, and walking. COVID shut down our world. Stroke shut down mine. When I first returned home, Din still had to work. My good friend Jean came to the door wearing her mask. She placed a bowl of homemade vegetable soup on the counter. Soon after, I had to call my landlords, John and Paul, to carry the hot soup from the kitchen to the table. I was afraid of spilling it. I was so unsteady. I felt helpless. I thought, is this the way my life is going to be forever? There are still moments when I ask myself the same question. Even though I have a supportive group of loved ones, I was left home alone with my thoughts and realizations. Emotions hit me like a hammer. Fear, sadness, and uncertainty. It swirled in my mind and overtook my body. Am I going to spend the rest of my life this way? Will my friends abandon me? Will Din leave me? Suddenly, I was unable to do so many things that were important parts of my life. How could I skipper a 45-foot sailboat with my limited strength and mobility? 50-plus mile bike rides were out of the question due to my lack of balance. It was hard to imagine walking to the kitchen, let alone hiking a mountain pass. I started rehabilitation right away. The rehab centers were full, so the physical therapist came to my house. Later, I met the occupational therapist and speech pathologist virtually. My goals were to relearn to walk and to perform simple tasks like texting, brushing my teeth, and showering. I worked hard on my recovery exercises. There was a point in physical therapy when we got to go outside. Lauren, my PT, told me to focus on lifting my right knee first and then placing my foot ahead. In the beginning, I had to concentrate on every movement, telling different parts of my body to shift. It was a slow process. In time, it became natural. I tried to walk as much as possible. It wasn't easy, but I persisted, and Din helped me. He would walk with me while I used walking sticks. Sometimes the sidewalks were slick, snow, which made it even more challenging. I remember once falling despite the sticks and Din at my side. I was shaken and scared by that experience. Din is a great support, as are my many friends. Yet one of the serious results of my stroke is depression, an insidious disease. At times, my sadness is overwhelming, and all I want to do is crawl into bed and sleep. I don't want to talk to anybody or see anyone. At other times, it's hard to talk at all, and I can't barely whisper. The COVID-19 pandemic further isolated me from the people I love. Today, I will share specific tools I use to move beyond the moments of depression. One thing I've learned is that with the internet, I don't have to go anywhere to feel connected. I've discovered that I'm not the only stroke survivor, and that has helped me lift myself out of my dark cloud. One evening, I attended a virtual stroke support group organized by the Swedish Medical Center in Seattle. Afterward, I reached out to one of the participants who was about my age. It was really helpful to connect with another stroke survivor, and it motivated me to reach out to others. So I attended another stroke support group organized by Virginia Mason Medical Center in Seattle. I now attend 3 of these groups that meet monthly. When I reach out, I connect with others, hear about resources, and find opportunities. This really helps me out of my sadness and feel more understood and connected. One of the group participants, Tess, is a sailor and sails with Footloose Disabled Sailing, an adaptive organization. Before my stroke, I explored the world by sailboat. I cherish memories sailing the New England coast, Puget Sound, San Juan Islands, Gulf Islands, Caribbean, and Croatia, to name a few. I even taught in a Norwegian sail training ship for American high school students, sailing around the North Atlantic from Norway to West Africa and Brazil. I say all this to emphasize how important sailing was to my pre-stroke life. Thanks to the support group, Tess, and to Footloose, I reclaimed my passion as a sailor despite my challenges. Now I sail a few times a month in the summer. I feel in good company with fellow stroke survivors who also yearn to get back on the water. I was excited about this opportunity to sail again. Looking back, if I wouldn't have joined the support group, I wouldn't have known about this opportunity. Connecting with others helps, but at times depression still finds me. Sometimes I feel deeply sorry for myself and want to crawl into bed, get under the covers, and cry. I've learned to recognize when I feel that way and start by accepting those feelings. My therapist, Vivian, encouraged me to start ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. This works by first acknowledging and accepting my feelings and thoughts, then committing to effective action. Each step of the process is helpful for me. Acceptance. First, accept the feelings. The feelings are so overwhelming that it's hard to ignore them. Instead, I've learned to feel them, name them, and mindfully hold them. If I'm overwhelmed by sadness and don't want to talk with anyone or leave my room, I think, wow, the sadness set in today. I feel heavy and depressed. I'm going to name it and feel it. Then I know what to do. Next step, direction. Once I acknowledge and accept my feelings in that moment, I think of one step in a positive direction that will push me forward. Warning, do not rehash the past. That's off limits in this direction stage. So if I am sad and don't want to talk with anyone, maybe one step I can take in a positive direction is to get out in the sun and go for a walk. Remember, I just want to pull covers over my head at this point, so I have to push myself in a positive direction. That's what comes to mind. Get out and go for a walk. The last step to ACT is commitment. Commit and follow through with the positive direction I choose. So in this case, it would be getting out of bed, dressing, then leaving the apartment to walk up the street in the sun. Once I'm in the sun, moving my body in fresh air, I often forget about my depression and I can go on with my day. It's such a simple process with powerful results. A couple of years ago, while reflecting on my stroke experience, I flipped my depressed thoughts on their head. I wrote a piece called The Stroke of Opportunity. This all started when I read books about other stroke survivors sharing their experience. On a good day, I asked myself, how can my stroke turn into a gift or an opportunity? I could share my writing with other stroke survivors. I could create a stroke survivor meetup. I am no longer a workaholic. Now I have the opportunity to focus on what is essential and say no to what is not. Stroke offered me an opportunity to slow down and evaluate my priorities. It gave me an opportunity to shift my lifestyle and life. Now I try to focus on the little things that give me encouragement. One day I got my bike out of the shed, pumped up the tires, and put my helmet on. Somewhat fearful, I got on my bike, made sure I was able to balance, and rode up the street. Wow, I did it! After that, I did it again, going farther this time. That courage and determination and mindset is an opportunity, a choice. For all my life, I have valued my independence. In my early 20s, I left home to attend graduate school in Massachusetts, then spent 15 months in Israel as a postdoctoral fellow. After that, I traveled solo for 5 months throughout Europe. Now I'm dependent on others. I'm fortunate my husband is devoted. He carries heavy groceries for me, keeps up the house, and supports me through my highs and lows. As a very independent person, it is important for me to strike a balance between dependence and independence. And sometimes Din goes a little too far. In his loving kindness, he tries to do things I'm able to do myself. In those times, I let him know. I think it's important that I continue to push myself and work toward independence. And there are times I simply let Din help rather than protesting. Din helps me navigate uncomfortable situations. For example, getting through airports can be really challenging. I learned that when I make a reservation, I can ask for accommodations, and all I have to do is arrive at the ticket counter to let them know, and they assign someone to wheel me to the gate in a wheelchair. Times like that, I am really grateful to acceptance. When I've overcome big obstacles like travel, I'm proud of the opportunities I've taken and the choices I've made in recovery. And that all helps me work through depression too. Recovery isn't always linear. I'm proud of myself one day, then the next day I feel sorry for myself. I ask, why did this happen to me? Another tool that helps me on those down days is gratitude. I force myself to think that I should be grateful that my stroke was not worse than it was. I've developed a deep compassion for my fellow stroke survivors. Some of those stroke survivors are unable to speak coherently. Some confined to wheelchairs. At a barbecue for stroke survivors, I saw a young man not able to speak coherently. I asked him why he wasn't eating. His significant other and caregiver answered that he was not able to swallow food, so he had to rely on a feeding tube, which he proudly showed me. He was connecting with me in the way he could. He was using his abilities to connect, which inspires me to use my abilities to connect. And for that, I'm really grateful. I'd like to be clear here. When I see people who are not as lucky as I am, I avoid gloating and feeling sorry for them. I avoid what is called schadenfreude, taking pleasure in someone else's pain. Instead, I have learned to have compassion for my fellow stroke survivors. In fact, I often feel compassion for all people with disabilities. In these moments, I'm grateful for what I have. I can walk long distances. I can swim. I can do so many things. I have a husband who's devoted to me, and I am devoted to. Now, at age 80, I still have an active brain. It certainly has slowed down a lot from when I was younger, but it still functions. Another tool I use when depression sets in is a Buddhist practice called mudita, sympathetic joy, or joy in the joy of others. Instead of feeling sorry for myself when I see someone biking or hear of a friend sailing, I adopt this practice as much as possible and feel joy in imagining how much joy others are having in the moment. Of course, at times I do feel envious, but it's like being in the presence of someone joyfully laughing. I cannot help but joyfully laugh too. When I have had to deal with loss, I do have a choice. I could constantly feel sorry for myself. I do give myself permission once in a while. Or I could focus on what I do have and how I want to spend the rest of my life. All in all, I want stroke survivors to learn from my experience. I've shared tools that helped me move beyond depression. I also place great importance on professional help. My hope is that other stroke survivors find and share their own ways to happiness and fulfillment.
Thank you, Barry. In closing, we take a moment of pause to reflect upon the wisdom, purpose, connection, and hope Barry talked about today. And we give thanks.
Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke is made possible by our guests and tax-deductible donations from friends and listeners like you. Join us in empowering stroke survivors with stories of wisdom, purpose, connection, and hope at www.beyondstillness.org. Another way to support is to like, share, or subscribe to our weekly show. Again, thank you for devoting time and space for this week's episode of Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke.
Thank you for listening to Part 1, Barry North's story. Stick with us for Part 2, Barry North's interview. Each colorful memory creates a parable for life's greater teachings, a compass for journeys ahead, and inspired wisdom for unique growth. We hope Barry's journey and strategies shared inspire you to tackle your own challenges. Remember, seeking professional support can be essential for managing depression and discovering renewal. Stay resilient and keep moving forward on your path toward healing. As part of the stroke community, you are more than supportive. You are inspirational. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with others and consider donating to Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke.
If you are part of the stroke community and have a story you'd like to share on the show, please contact us. Email molly@beyondstillness.org.